Imagine on a random day an army commander walks into a strange glowing light. He comes back a few minutes later, but it looks like he's been away for days. In 1977, Chilean soldier Armando Valdés did exactly that, and no one has ever been able to explain what happened. The incident happened near Pampa Luscuma, a plateau a few kilometers away from Putre in Chile's far north. Putre sits about 3,500 meters above sea level, where the nights are cold and the air is thin. It was a simple guard detail on foot assigned to watch a group of army horses. Most of the men were young conscripts, soldiers doing compulsory service, led by a 22-year-old professional corporal, Armando Valdés. They rotated through the night and kept a small fire going to stay warm and awake. For a while, everything was according to the plan. In the pre-dawn hours of April 25, several men on duty reported seeing two strong lights over the hills. One was distant and static. The other was closer and moving. They woke up the corporal. Standard field sense kicked in. They put out the fire to avoid drawing attention and observed. According to multiple accounts, the nearer light shifted its position and seemed to settle within a few hundred meters. At that point, Valdés told his men to hold and advanced alone a short distance and shouted, "Identify yourself." If you're enjoying this story, please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. We've got more coming for you. Here is the hinge of the entire story. The soldiers say Valdés walked forward into the darkness, and then he was gone. They waited for roughly 15 minutes, then just as suddenly, he reappeared. He stumbled his way through, and in a flat voice that did not sound like his own voice, he spoke out, "You don't know who we are or where we come from, but we will return." After that, he collapsed by the extinguished fire. When soldiers rushed to him, they noticed two very peculiar things. Firstly, the date on Valdés's wristwatch read 5 days ahead. It said April 30th instead of April 25th. Secondly, he returned with several days of beard growth, despite being clean-shaven earlier that night. In the days that followed, the unit moved back to base. He was examined by military doctors in Santiago. The medical framing that later filtered out described the episode in terms of shock or a hallucinatory event, which if overplayed could embarrass the army. But that did not close the case. Chile's press picked it up within weeks. Names of conscripts circulated in some articles and the dramatic details were everywhere. What's notable is that the army did not flatly deny that something odd had happened. It allowed interviews with the soldiers to be published and aired while keeping a tight look on the tone. Across the earliest accounts, 3 elements sit in the middle of the Venn diagram. Number 1, multiple witnesses saw 2 lights. Number 2, the corporal separated from the group and was out of the view for about 15 minutes. Number 3, he returned in a disturbed state. The beard and the watch details are where memories start to diverge over the years. Now let's slow down and examine each of these claims, starting with the watch. Early retellings of the story say that the calendar on the watch showed April 30th, and that as soon as he came back, the watch stopped working. Later interviews, including from Valdés himself, introduced contradictions. Whether it was a digital or analog watch, whether it stopped, whether anyone recorded the reading on the spot, and whether the date advance was ever verified by someone other than the shaken soldiers. Too many versions, not enough immediate documentation. As for the other claim, the striking line was, he came back with 5 days of beard growth. That's easy to imagine and easy to repeat, but later statements soften it. In some later interviews, witnesses described him as more unshaven, not suddenly bearded, and Valdés himself disputed the idea that he had been clean-shaven before the shift. Without a photo from that night, the sudden beard doesn't stand up as solid evidence. But what about the famous quote, "You don't know who we are or where we come from, but we will return"? It is unforgettable and sends chills down the spine. And here's what matters the most. This has not been disputed across different accounts, which brings back the element of mystery to our story. The abduction reading. The lights were non-human craft. They took the corporal, and he came back altered, with missing time and a scrambled mental state. Supporters point to the number of witnesses and the risk these young men took by talking during a strict political era. The psychological and environmental reading. In this view, conditions did most of the work. The group was cold, tired, and slightly oxygen deprived. Remember the thin air we noted earlier? So attention, depth perception, and judgment were already off. They noticed unfamiliar lights on the horizon and misread their movement. A brief absence stretched in the young minds, and minutes felt like much longer. When he returned, looking shaken, dazed, and quiet, they filtered his words through their own fear and the expectation that something extraordinary had happened. The unknown but human reading. The lights were real, but not extraterrestrial. Maybe flares, an aircraft, or another operation in a border zone during a tense period. So the group did encounter something unusual, but not otherworldly. This middle path accepts a strange event while rejecting the extraordinary claims about time jumps. For years after the incident, Valdés avoided interviews. He avoided talking about it at all. Then, after retiring from the army, he went on TV and radio, and for a while he kept the legend alive. But around 2012, Valdés was publicly saying something very different from the myth that made him famous. He said he hadn't been abducted at all. He said he separated from his men, lost his bearings for a moment, possibly used the moment to relieve himself, and then returned. He has even framed his later fame as something he didn't ask for. But his denial does not nullify the moment that was described by the conscripts. 2 lights, a separation, and a shocked return. It does force us to weigh 2 kinds of testimony. On one hand, we have young soldiers talking soon after a scary night with details that already vary in minor ways. On the other, we have an older man, decades later, retelling the story that made him famous. Memory shifts. Incentives shift. People also want peace from a legend that is following them. But the reality is that what really happened remains elusive until today.